Today is March 30th, 2023, and I finally got to work out yesterday for the first time in a long time because my PICC line is now gone and I can do push-ups and stuff. It's not a lot, but at least it's something to get me moving, which it's been difficult just being stuck in the same position for so long. So I'm excited about that. This morning I was reading the prophet Jeremiah in my Bible devotional time, and something caught my attention. And in the portion of Jeremiah that I'm reading, he's really dealing with some intense suffering. Everyone wants to kill him. He's hated by everyone in Israel because he was speaking the truth and they didn't like it. And Jeremiah starts complaining. And he complains to God and says, God, why was I even born? Why couldn't I had just died in my mother's womb, and then that would have been my burial site, rather than this pit people are trying to dig for me. Like, I should have died. It's better that I would have never lived at all. But obviously, God knew better than that. Jeremiah didn't understand how he was being used in that moment, but he's one of the most influential characters in all of history. And God knew that he was using Jeremiah in that way. In fact, at another point, God says to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and I appointed you to be a prophet unto the nations. So God knew all this was going to happen. He knew that Jeremiah was going to be persecuted and hated and suffer greatly. He knew that before he even formed him in the womb. And so there's a lesson in this. Sometimes, especially in today's world, we can tend to think, oh, you know what? If someone's really suffering, it would be better that they just weren't alive. And we can see this with abortion, and how many people will say, if a child is going to be brought into the world in difficult circumstances, it would just be better that we abort them. Or like the case in Iceland, where if a baby, they can do this test to tell if a baby is going to have Down syndrome. And if the baby has Down syndrome in Iceland, they're required to abort it. And then they boast of having no people with Down syndrome in Iceland. And yet, people with Down syndrome report like extremely high levels of happiness, like way more than the average person. They're way happier about life, and yet we say, there's something different there. It's I don't know why we would do that, but it happens a lot. And it happens with end of life issues. We're seeing it with Canada and euthanasia and assisted suicide. Like, if someone says they're suffering, they can just go to a doctor and end it right there. But they don't always know what could be down the road. Maybe they're suffering at the moment, but what if that suffering was just about to end and they were going to enter into a new stage of life that's full of blessings and maybe very beneficial to other people? Maybe they could help many other people. We don't have the gift of foresight. We don't We aren't able to see into the future. Only God can do that. And so when we try and say, oh, it's better if someone just didn't have to live through this, we don't have enough understanding to make that call. And just like Jeremiah is a prophet. He actually did make predictions about the future. But those always came from God. And when he was in the midst of his suffering, he didn't know that he was being useful. He probably felt worthless. And so he said, you know what? It'd be better if I just wasn't alive. Why did I ever have to be born into this world? But God knew that he had a bigger purpose for Jeremiah, that Jeremiah was going to be one of the most influential people to ever live. And so we have to be humble when it comes to dealing with life and death. Like, we don't have the capacity to make those decisions. That should be left up to God. And if we end life because we think we know better, it could lead to some seriously devastating consequences. So that was the lesson I got in my Bible reading today. That's all I got for today. Peace.